Hey there, and welcome to another lot of stuff and nonsense. A show that's full of stuff, and of course, there's going to be nonsense. I'm Jo, the one that isn't Northern Irish.
I'm Annella, the one that is. Jo, did you? I imagine you caught the football.
Yeah, it had to be mentioned, didn't it? It's to be fair, you know, I'm an England fan. Yes, I am. Can I just get in as well? It's not the first England final because in 2006 the women did get through. So I just
why do the women always get forgotten? The same with tennis.
Well,
same with any sports. So it's just like
Andy Murray didn't forget though, did he? So you know,
I just want to, on a side note, my neighbours have started cutting down trees just as we started recording. But back to the football, absolutely disgusting scenes, wasn't there? I was just appalled. You wouldn't get that if Northern Ireland or Ireland were playing in the final, would you? Well, look, it would be fun and laughs and banter.
Look, the thing is, it was disgusting, but I knew as soon as it was our young black guys that actually missed the penalty, I knew before even the trolls got on the internet what was going to happen. And that was my heart sunk. You know, we'd had such a great journey with this squad, and they're such a progressive team. You know, I mean, they're all playing in the pool with rainbow unicorns. You know, there's so many instances of such wonderful players and wonderful team, you know, and it was so disappointing. But yeah,
it was awful. What they have to put up with is just absolutely shocking. It's as you said, you knew what was going to happen. It's there. It's very out there. The racism is very in your face. It's awful. I did love the little pride car that came in at the start of the game. That was cool.
I followed it on Twitter.
Do they have a Twitter handle, do they?
Yes, of course I'm following it. Of course, but yeah, I mean, it's the whole tournament was such a brilliant ride for everyone, and it's what we needed. And to be let down by our own England fans, it's despicable and disgusting. But you know what? It's the same people that boo when the boys are taking the knee. You know, I mean, it's just standing up against racism to kick it out, and the people just don't get it, and that's why they've still got us be bending the knee, you know. But yeah, look, this is really not light at all, is it? But it's something that I know we're both passionate about.
We have a great guest in today. Who have we got, Jo?
Yeah, well,
tell us about them.
Well, if you give me a chance, I will.
Just tell us about them. Hurry up there.
Now I know it's Keeley. We've got Keeley, who's a musician and writer. She should be here any second now. So, hey, here we go. Perfect.
Keeley.
Hello.
Okay, welcome. You're going to kick your shoes off and just feel comfortable in our little Zoom room. And now, Keeley, look, you have just released your EP, A Brave Warrior, which I love the title of. You're also a writer, prolific blogger, and author of the Keeley Chronicles, which I'm sure will come up during our conversation later.
Thank you. I'm guilty as charged, my lord.
And we were just talking before you came on about football. Are you a football fan?
I am. It's the only sport I've ever really loved, and there's something about not just football itself, the beautiful game, but the culture around it, and all of the reference points, and the really funny, witty aspects of the characters and the managers, and all of what makes up, the culture of football and being a fan. Everything from John Motson's sheepskin coat to Paolo Di Canio and his kind of raging, manic touchline antics, to Peter Beardsley's horrendous haircuts. Everything is in there, and I just find it's a really rich source of joy.
Do you have a favorite team? Do you live in Dublin right now? Is that where you're from?
Yeah, I'm from Dublin, and I've lived here. I've lived here pretty much all my life. Although I've managed to somehow conduct a very nomadic crawl around Dublin. I've moved house 28 times, or moved flat 28 times. So I'm making a very circuitous pursuit I'm kind of traveling around Dublin in a sort of a Phileas Fogg-esque fashion. So he went around the world in 80 days. I'm going around Dublin in 80 moves by the looks of it.
So is there a team in Dublin that you like, a football team, or do you support one of the other?
I support one of the English clubs, which I would be a bit sacrilegious to, you know, some kind of diehard League of Ireland people. I support Manchester United. I know it. I was waiting. I was bracing myself for the recoiling. But I suppose it's one of those things that, I mean, originally I was a fan of football generally. And I just loved everything about the game and the characters involved and all of the reference points. But it wasn't until I started to feel, actually, I went to see a match at Old Trafford, and just something about United as a club that emotionally I just felt drawn towards, and it had nothing to do with their status or the largesse of them as this, you know, global behemoth. It was just much more so just something about the feel of the club, which isn't always easy to feel, because when you've got this quite irritating commercial juggernaut around the club all the time, it really, you know, it can be a quite soulless. I mean, you've got things like official noodle partners and stuff like this. You start using that. I mean, I can say this right now. If Keeley ever gets an official noodle partner for the band, right, I can plead right away. I can say that will be the moment to bow out of music, or certainly the moment to step away from the limelight.
I do get it. There's a lot of history. You can feel it. And I do understand that. Obviously not a fan. I might have to edit that bit out, what I just said then. But yeah, I get it, Keeley. Being a West Ham massive fan, season ticket holder for the women as well as the men. I think you're right. It's like a soap opera, isn't it? There's so much that goes on.
It is like a soap opera. And all of the intrigue and the dramas and the transfers and the deadline day and you know, Harry Redknapp sticking his head out of the car window, all of these things are just priceless. And then you get the characters, and obviously you get people like, say, Sam Allardyce and Steve Bruce and all, and you'll know, you know, from having, because I'm well aware of the West Ham way and the holy trinity of English football that was, you know, Jeff Hurst and Bobby Moore and Martin Peters, and how they formed the spine of the 1966 England World Cup team, and yeah, all of that. So you know, and then of course you've got Big Sam coming along with his hoofball, with his agricultural football, besmirching the good footballing reputation of the Hammers and driving the Upton Park Massive to derangement. It was a very dark time in human history.
Wow, do you know, I think we just might stop this whole thing now and we turn it all off. We'll have a good chat about football, because yeah, it's amazing. And I just love the fact that you know about West Ham. You didn't know that I was a West Ham fan, so that's amazing. You must be a true football fan. So yeah, but I could talk about that for hours, and no, I better change the subject, I think, slightly. Annella,
yeah,
I think, do you want to move us away from this?
I am. I wanted to ask another little fun fact about you. What was your first gig? Because one of my first gigs, I was 13 years old, and it was in Dublin. My sister took me to the Blades in the Baga Inn. Is the Baga Inn still?
It's no longer a music venue, but it's spoken about still. I still hear about those U2 and Blades gigs in the Baga Inn, and kind of rivalry between those two bands. But that's amazing that you saw.
I was 13. I went with my sister. I can even see what I was wearing that day. It's a vivid memory, and it was amazing because I loved the Blades at the time. I was a young mod back then. And they randomly had this mod following, which was strange. What about you? Do you remember your first gig? Or?
Yeah, my very first gig was Oasis, who I saw in Dublin when I was 15 years old, 13, 14. My mum came with me. I was 13 years old. Thank you to my mum for coming with me, because I wouldn't have gotten in otherwise. And you know, that was one of the moments along this pathway that really kind of triggered this lifelong love and this subsequent eruption in myself to want to pursue music with just unbridled passion, because that first time seeing a live band on stage and the atmosphere and just this, and I was right at the back, and it was this, dark venue, and watching this band cook up this sonic storm on stage with, they had this amazing wall of sound, and they had obviously great songs, and a really strange stage presence, because although they were very static on stage, they exuded, or certainly Liam exuded, such charisma in his own very, anti-charismatic sort of way. It's very kind of, this rock swagger, and so that was pretty hypnotic, seeing Oasis live for the first time, and I was already hooked on music from when I'd heard. The first music I ever fell in love with was the Pet Shop Boys, West End Girls. That song that was like my gateway, and then hearing the Smiths changed my life completely, and that's what made me want to do music. And then seeing my first gig, seeing Oasis live, was just, it was just
That's a great first gig.
Yeah.
Huge. Was that a huge gig, the Oasis gig, or was it a smaller? Were they huge at the time? I know they were. Well, I think they were quickly escalated to stadium.
I saw them in a small club.
Right, that's brilliant.
Yeah, it was extraordinary, because they were, progressing in terms like that. Their profile was exploding exponentially, and couldn't find venues big enough to hold them. I was just going up and up and up, and it's funny, like, I'm not to compare myself with Oasis, and obviously we're not yet able to play live because of the restrictions, the pandemic, and everything like that has dogged us. But what I'm experiencing in my own life, on a daily basis, on an hourly basis at the moment, has given me an insight into what it must have been like for them, and what it would be like for any band experiencing a sudden rise, and where you're suddenly, it's an amazing experience, that even though I had spent my whole life studying effectively for this, and immersing myself in pop culture and music, I've read almost exclusively books about bands, probably because I'm fascinated about music, fascinated about the music business, fascinated about the dynamics in bands, between band members, but also all of the things that happen to bands, all of the pitfalls. I never wanted to befall, I always thought, if I could avoid making as many mistakes as possible by, I suppose, educating myself as much as possible about those pitfalls, then that would hopefully hold me instead.
I mean, your EP now, like Brave Warrior, because you're talking about sort of like how things really feel like it's starting for you, really taking off, and it went straight into the indie chart at 14, right? And it's getting so much airplay home and abroad. Actually, I know, Annella, I'm going to give a plug to Annella, because I heard one of your songs as well on WMPG Call Britannia, Annella's show as well the other day. So you've got to be really super busy right now. It's just got to be hectic, but just an amazing I can't imagine being in that moment.
Thank you. It's I've waited and wanted this experience my whole life. And when it happens, no matter how much you think you're prepared, you're not prepared. I mean, I have been studying and reading, and I think more so than other musicians, because I know a lot of musicians, and pretty much their interest pretty much begins and ends with music, with the playing of music, with playing live, with doing recording. They're not as interested generally in the nitty-gritty of the industry and bands and what goes on, but I'm fascinated by all of that, and I thought that I've read all the books, but even so, it doesn't prepare you for what happens when this happens, because you find yourself like, there's been a couple of moments of clarity recently where I was just like, this is insane. There was one day, a few days ago, I was trying to decide. I had so little time during the day. I was trying to decide whether to brush my teeth or go for a pee. It was only one or the other that I had time to do. And like you go, I mean, at the moment I'm surviving on 4 hours sleep a night, every night, because I just don't. I stay up till about 8 o'clock in the morning. I work through the night dealing with all the backlog, because during the day I have so much promo and to do and kind of in media, interviews and everything, which I love doing. But then all of the task-based stuff, you know, that has to kind of get pushed on to night, because I can't do the next day, because there'd be another, you know, 20 hours of kind of, you know, stuff, and then liaising with everyone. But I'm loving all of it. I'm absolutely loving it. And I mean, I'm having the best summer of my life. Kind of feels like my life has gone from black and white into Technicolor. And it is surreal. Like even some of the people that are sending me friend requests and following me on social, a lot of 90s bands actually, like people that I was like, when I was a child, they were like #1 in the album charts in the UK, like Martin Rossiter from Gene and Mark Morrison, the Blue Tones, and Piroshka, Mickey Brenny from Lush, and all these people I'd send. It's just, and the lead singer of Mud sent me a friend request after followed me on Instagram after my first play on the Steve Lamacq show, and I was like, the lead singer of Mud. I just couldn't believe it, like that, you know, that all these cats are kind of want to follow this, you know, weird person in Dublin.
Who's having a lot of success.
Oh, thank you. Thanks very much.
How did you go from enjoying a band and watching a band to actually thinking, I want to do this, I want to pick up the guitar? So when did you actually get to that point where you got a guitar, and yet that guitar, because it does, when I'm watching your videos, it looks like it's a part of you?
Yeah, definitely. Well, the thing about that, like I can definitely pinpoint that moment, and thank you for picking up on that, because it very much is. I feel like my instrument is very much an extension of me, because, you know, all I am is all I do, really, you know, that, and that's, you know, other musicians, and I always hear musicians saying this or referring to in interviews. They'll say, I have a life outside the band, or I have a life outside music. I don't have a life outside music, and I don't want one. I've never wanted one. I mean, the only life I have outside of music is in relation to Inga, in relation to what I do in relation to her, but that's kind of, I brought that into the music as well, so it's kind of interlinked. But getting back to the Smiths, what happened there was, I was at the Gaeltacht, which is a thing in the south of Ireland. It's sort of like a summer camp where kids go to learn, they supposedly go to learn the Irish language. But I can tell you this, I knew no more of the Irish language coming out of the Gaeltacht than I did going. I'm the worst, like, academic person in the world. I don't know how. My blog is on Inga Maria Houser is very factual and it's very orderly, and I have a real head for that kind of stuff. If I'm into a subject, I get really engrossed in it. But in terms of if I'm not passionate about something, I'm worse. So I didn't really learn any Irish. But one thing I did learn there, which was a life-changing thing, was while at the Gaeltacht, one morning I'd met this boy on the train on the way down to County Waterford on our way to the Gaeltacht, and we just got chatting. He was a lot older than me, and he was really good looking. It was, you know, that thing when a guy is, you know, you're kind of, I always remember he had this really gorgeous fluffy fringe. Anyway, but I went to visit him in his dorm. It was a Saturday morning, and I opened the door, and my life changed in that moment, because what was playing was the Smiths' Louder Than Bombs compilation, which was an American-only compilation that then was released on import, and then it was again an official release, much to Morrissey's chagrin, because it ruined he has a thing about chart positions, and it went in at number 38 in the UK album charts, which enraged him, because all the Smiths albums had all been top 10 up to that point, or like Muse Murder was #1, Strangers Who Come #2, Rank was #2, the Smiths was #2, and suddenly, and the World Won't Listen was #2, and suddenly you got Louder Than Bombs, which is like number 38, that melted his head. So, but what happened was, when I heard that record, or I heard, you know, the first music from it, it floored me. I'd never heard anything like this in my life. And I couldn't understand how it sounded like that, because at that stage I knew nothing about production. I knew nothing about the mechanics of music. And the sound was so, it just sounded otherworldly. It didn't sound the way anything I'd heard on the radio. It didn't, you know, it just had a depth to it sonically and lyrically. And it alluded to things that were really outside or just kind of on the periphery of my understanding as a kid at that stage. So from that moment when I heard the Smiths, I just became a rabid fan and fell in love with them, fell in love with their music. And for about a year, all I had and all I did was listen to the Smiths, read about the Smiths, talk about the Smiths. I was just completely consumed by them. When I heard, it was specifically actually song Panic. And I couldn't understand how it sounded like that, because I didn't realize about layering and production and amps and different techniques. I was just like, I just couldn't. So the very first time I picked up a guitar, I was just a bit crestfallen, because I was wondering, why doesn't it sound the way the guitar sounds on the Smiths record? But it took me a while, but that was my starting point. And I learned my first 3 chords, and then I just taught myself everything else I know just by ear, and just went forward.
Johnny Marr certainly is not the easiest to emulate, right? So do you read tabs, or is it just literally by ear when you're, because I love the covers that you've been doing online. I'm a big Smiths fan, so yeah, huge. So not easy to play.
I write my own music very instinctively. I hear music in my head all the time. And when I have time to actually sit down and turn it into a song, I just find the notes that I hear in my head and develop it into a song. And a lot of the time I wake up with music in my head. Seriously, like I dream songs. 2 songs last week that I wrote just like that. Which is just as well, because I haven't really got time to write, so it's just as well that way, so that I don't have to do it any other way. But what happens with the covers that I've done, I had never really done covers, because I suppose I had this a bit of a sniffy attitude where I was like, oh, I don't want to do covers, because I was very focused on just doing my own material. And but what happened was, when the pandemic struck and we went into lockdown, and suddenly this new band that I'd formed, we'd only played 1 gig, and 4 days later we went into lockdown, and 6 gigs that I'd booked for the band had cancelled overnight. So I thought, well, how am I going to reach people? How am I going to, because I was stuck in here. I mean, as lovely as it is, it's it's a small flat. And I thought, I mean, I live on my own. I don't have a pet. I don't have a garden. I don't have a TV. I was completely, this was it. It's going to be my only kind of space. And in the Republic of Ireland, we've had a very stringent lockdown, more so than, I think it's been more extreme here than in any other European country, as far as I know, because the extent of the restrictions and the way that it's been kind of orchestrated. So I was just like, right, well, maybe I should film myself playing some songs and try and post those online and try and reach people, and maybe try and console people who are in a similar situation of being locked indoors and unable to get out. And I thought to myself, I was really reluctant to do my own songs, because I thought, well, at that stage I hadn't released any of my own music under my own name. So I thought, well, maybe I should do some covers, because that would be something familiar for people to hold on to. And then what I thought maybe I could do would be to try and cover songs that people might not know by bands that they do know. So I thought I'd find more rare songs and kind of, buried treasure and kind of lesser lights. Songs that are brilliant, but just were never singles. Songs like I Don't Owe You Anything by the Smiths, or Shoot You Down by the Stone Roses, or like Shine a Light by Spiritualized, Time to Go by Supergrass, all of these songs. Pantomime, Horse, Place Wade. So a lot of album tracks. So I just randomly recorded them. But what I did was I would learn them by ear and try and film it within 5 minutes of learning it. So to capture the freshness and the spontaneity of it. So I just, and then just whack them up online. And it's been amazing to me, the response of people, hundreds of Smiths fans and fans of the Jam and bands like that, who've actually, started following me in my own music, which has been really lovely. And Blur fans as well. So that's another really nice thing. But yeah, but I think in terms of guitar, in terms of learning other people's material, I do everything by ear. I wouldn't know what to make of a tab. To me, it just looks like numbers and like diagrams. My mind just doesn't work that way, that I can make sense of numbers and lines and stuff. So I hear it and I just play it. And I always kind of assume that that's the way other musicians operate, but apparently it's not, because whenever I look under covers, I often see, hey man, have you got the tabs? And I'm always like, just play it. I don't understand like this thing. Just like, just play what you hear. But
it was like you opened the door to your house straight into your flat, and I felt like I should be having a ticket when I was watching it every time I looked at them.
I love the way that musicians have done that through the pandemic and sort of opened themselves up and done these little live. I don't know if you've seen Toya with her husband.
I have. With Robert.
Yeah.
So entertaining.
Oh, so entertaining.
Increasingly outlandish. And I love the way he is so different from her. He's really shy and she's really full on. And it makes such a good combination.
Yeah, I've just been loving that stuff through the pandemic. I think it has given a lot to people. You know, it certainly gave a lot to me too. You know, like you, I was stuck in Northern Ireland during the lockdown, so I know how strict it was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was right. I couldn't even go across the border if I wanted to fly back here. It was that strict. I think it was like a €5,000 fine if you were caught traveling over the border.
Wow.
From the north to the south.
Just as well, I did Mount Annie Wright Brothers-esque flight. Really Lufthansa moments.
What's your next thing? Yeah.
That and an official noodle partner.
Yeah. You know what though? Look, I mean, I've noticed obviously in the videos it was the first time I noticed them, but I can see more now as well, because I can see at the back you've got album covers as well as posters. Are you a collector?
Oh yes, absolutely. Like what happened here, I'd always been moving my whole life. You know, I had a very unsettled family life and was constantly having to move. And just due to a very dysfunctional kind of upbringing. So when I moved here to this flat, it was the first time where I felt I could make a home. And so having moved 28 times and lived generally in places from anything from a week up to 1 year, finally I was able to live in this place. And I've been here now for 13 years. And I built it took 10 years to build 40 separate murals showcasing the artworks of my 40 favorite bands. So despite the fact that it's a relatively small place, I somehow managed to, and I wish I could show you, but if I pick the camera up, it'll be like a rocket will launch in Beijing or something. Touching any, because I have done this in interviews before where I've tried to take the viewers on a guided tour and everything falls. It looks like an explosion in a Nikon factory or something. So I'm just like, no, I'm going to park that thought. But yeah, there's a lot here in terms of, I suppose with it, I just wanted to, now that I finally had the chance to kind of to sculpt a sonic space. I wanted the walls to look the way I felt the inside of me feels, so I wanted it to just be music. So all there is music and Inga Maria Houser, and that's all there is. So it's just, you've got there's a wall devoted to the works of the Stone Roses, to works of the Smiths, work of the Beatles, the work of Echo and the Bunnymen, Blondie, the Pink Floyd, Sick for Animals, Genesis, Embrace, Simple Minds, Saint Etienne, the Charlatans, Joy Division, New Order, Blur, and then in the kitchen there's a section for Talking Heads, Tenders, Morrissey, The Jam, ABBA.
That's right up my street.
It just ticks off my whole playlist. It's just like goodness.
Yeah, I'm a big Stone Roses fan, and I think you can really hear all of those influences in your music. You know, I definitely hear the sort of the Brit poppy. I don't know. Do you call it shoegaze there? I've never heard that term until I moved to the States.
Shoegazing, yeah, definitely. Well,
Yeah.
I'm really glad that you can hear that, because there's definitely those elements in there. I mean, essentially, I fell in love with you know, indie rock, or kind of English indie rock, and then Welsh music, a lot of music from Wales, like Super Free Animals, Manic Street Preachers, Catatonia, and then bands from Ireland like Micro Disney and U2, and then bands from Scotland like Simple Minds and Franz Ferdinand, and then bands from America like Real Estate, and then older American bands like The Doors and The Byrds and The Velvet Underground, and then bands from further afield like from Germany like Kraftwerk and Neu and Faust. So all of those elements, I think, are kind of in this sonic soup that I'm stirring.
I think you need to do a playlist for my show, because everything is is stuff that I'm into as well. I think we have a great taste in music.
I'm happy to. I'd be honored.
I can't see in amongst all those posters that I've seen on your videos and right behind you there in the room you're in, I can't see any of your own posters. Have you got any of your own? Have you done much gigging in the past?
I've actually, there's a couple of Session Months posters over there.
Right.
One was a festival we did in Sligo with back in 2017, and it was my previous band. But there isn't anything else in terms of me, because I suppose it's very new. Like, I've only done one gig under my own name. That was 4 days before the pandemic started. But as we speak, there are live dates in the offing, and we're very immense. And actually, by the time that this is broadcast, it will be public knowledge. We're going to be playing our first headline show in Dublin at Whelan's in the main venue on the 13th of October.
Ooh, great.
We're also going to be playing at a festival in Dublin called the Dublin Keys Festival in August, and then we have first London date coming up in December. On December 9th, we're going to be playing the Lexington in London.
So you mentioned gigs for the rest of your year. That's pretty exciting, because everything's starting to open up. So you getting pretty exciting, or is it a little nerve-wracking for you?
Not nervous. I never get nervous playing live, which is just as well. But I love playing. I actually go into a trance on stage, because of the nature of the songs. With other bands, when you see them live, no matter how good they are, they play a whole load of songs, and they're, generally in a fairly random order, or maybe there might be songs that might be an effective opener and an effective closer and whatever. Where with what Keeley does in terms of myself and my band, all of our songs are just about one thing and one theme, one person, and playing those songs live and creating the soundscape around the songs, and our light show, which is very kind of quite entrancing in a kind of quite psychedelic way, puts me into a trance-like state. The one gig we had, I just went to another place, and I love that, being able to do that, because in everyday life there are many, there are stressful things, and there are so many things that keep us, or try and take us to an earthbound point where we're kind of bogged down with kind of domestic duties. And I think that's the role of art, or one of the roles of art, is to take us, to elevate us out of this dull domain and bring us, our hearts and our minds, into a state of rapture, and into a state of wonder, and into a state where we can lose ourselves in the moment, and in the music, and in the magic of it all. And that's why I do what I do. That's the reason. I don't make music for any other reason. I mean, I make music for two reasons. One, to telling the story, but I've always been making music for that, for another reason, which is to try and lose myself in the sound and swim in that sound. And we have when you come and see us live, when we're touring over in the States. Hopefully we'll get over there in the next year to 18
I hope
months.
so.
Thank you. But we have a very atmospheric sound, very, you know, dreamy, immersive sound with some really explosive moments as well. And getting to be in that sound it's the greatest feeling I've ever had, and it's where I want to be. So that's what I've said to the label. I mean, at our first meeting, when the first time that I actually met the record company, I said, I want three things. I want to be, you know, I'm hoping to one day become the best guitarist in the world. I want to be in the tightest band in the world. I want to gig and tour until my legs fall off. And I've said that to an interviewer recently, and they said, oh, you know, there's so many musicians who've been touring for years who will, you know, will kind of like disabuse you of that notion, because apparently is a very taxing thing to do. But for me, it's like, I'm a very dogged person, and when I believe in something, I go all out. And anyone who's read my blog, the Keeley Chronicles, will be aware of that I'm not for half measures. I'm not for turning, to quote old Maggie. And I think it's just really important that anything that one does, you're totally consumed by it and totally committed to it. And I think that's I get this beautiful feeling, this exhilarating feeling of drive and energy and focus. And I try and just divert it into just one or two areas, which is music and kind of Inga's cause. And I try and kind of bring this together as well, as much as possible, because when you're inspired by someone and something, it's a natural thing to want to write about them. And if I wasn't writing about her, I wouldn't be writing about anything else, because she moves me, and her story moves me in a way that nothing else ever has.
And I think that passion really comes across, you know, as an audience member watching that. You can really, you know, when somebody's got 100% in it or 110%, you know, it really does make a difference when you're watching it, and when you're watching somebody perform. You probably know that yourself.
So, yeah, it's
rather than somebody just going through the motions on stage.
Yeah,
you can tell the bands where it's just a job and the ones where it's their life. So looking at you now, Keeley, and I can see obviously everything around you, what's in your head, it's part of you. So it's not the music, it's everything that's inside of you, you're projecting out. And you're lucky that, you know, you're going to have the band as well that get you and understand you, because that is so different. Not just the session musicians can do that. You've got to be able to work with people, and when you've got all those ingredients, then there's absolutely nothing like it. And I can't wait to get to the gig in London in December now. I just really can't wait, because there's special moments, really special moments.
What you said there is so true, because finding the right collaborators who get you is so important. And I struggled with that for so long, where I just couldn't find the right musical co-conspirators who would have, you know, the instrumental ability aligned with the commitment and the reliability. Because there are things, you know, one thing that musicians over the years, a lot of musicians that I've met, you know, their social life or their kind of, you know, boozing would be a very high priority for a lot of them. And it's like, anything that detracts from the mission of the music has to go. Anything. So the you know, my take on this is just the cause is all. So I don't understand, you know, I suppose it's the way I need to be. You know, one of the things that I said to the record company when I sat down with them, and I think that this has been borne out by all of our subsequent, you know, experiences that we've had together, working together, but I said to them is, no one will work harder than me, because I will give everything, and I will give everything all the time. And it's just as well because it is a 7-day-a-week constant, you know, passionate pursuit. It is, you don't get a break, you don't get a weekend. I wouldn't want that break even if I could have it, because I just believe in this with such unbridled intensity. And I think the best way to do it is to throw yourself at it with an almost murderous intent. And it feeds back into the music. And you'll know this as a musician and as a guitarist. There's something about the guitar in particular as an instrument where it's almost like a lightning rod. It's almost like a weapon, an artistic weapon. And one of the things that really appeals to me and relates to London, because my favorite musician of all time is Bernard Butler of Wade and McCommon and Butler. And he, had a very androgynous appearance, and he was, quite girlish, especially in kind of Suede's early years. And in his early years as a musician, Suede and McCommon and Butler, very, quite effeminate looking. But he played the guitar with a murderous glee, and you see it, this ferocity and this beautiful, furious anger, that he managed to harness and propel with his instrument. And those guitar parts and those songs sounded the way they did because there was that element, and there was also a lot of passion and a lot of a sensual element that Brett Anderson brought in, but I just love that thing. And it's something that I suppose, because I'm an odd combination of elements, being a Gemini. I'm a gentle person in a lot of ways, but I have a very full-on personality as well, which I try and just channel into the art to try and make it as good as it is. And that's the thing I'm absolutely determined to do. I want to make what I do perfect. I want to make it as good as it can be, whether it sells 1 million copies or 10 copies. I need to know that I've done my absolute best to make it absolutely as good as it can be. And to feel that, and to, as a live band especially, to feel that feeling standing on stage when you're tight as a live band. And we're working towards that at present. We have our next rehearsal tomorrow night. But when you get that tightness between musicians on stage, and you have that command of your sound, and you've got an audience and it's kicking off, I mean, that's the greatest thing in the world, I think.
And you're enjoying it, you can, and that, as I said earlier, that all comes across.
It's kind of like a love affair as well when you're on stage with band members as well. When you get it right, that the back of the hairs at the back of your neck stand up as well, and you never play a wrong note, and it's just you're all as one as well. So, and that's, you just can't describe that. You can't, and you can only get that when you're actually playing live, whether in front of one person or 5,000. It doesn't matter. You just never lose that feeling, do you?
Exactly. There's when you said there about being as one, it's something that, like, I think this is something that hasn't been discussed a lot, or I haven't seen it mentioned much, or at all actually. But I think that there are parallels that can be drawn between sex and music in that sense, because the relationship between band members communicating without words, but communicating in a physical way together, united in a harmonic, in that way, is really tantamount to, I suppose, like a furious romp. Got these elements. You've got the passion is there, and the sweat inducing physical force, and then you've got this outcome. It really is. So that's why, in a sense, I don't mind, or I don't miss not having any love life, because I feel I get that out of music. I get that out of and I suppose it's just my dream is to have that a lot more often, because at the moment I'm doing so much promo and I love doing interviews, so that's great. But I'm really looking forward to being able to be on stage, even just in rehearsals. And it's not necessarily, I mean, playing to an audience, is an honor, and anyone who would come to see us be honored. But it's, for me, it's not about like soaking up the adulation of the crowd. I've never had any adulation really from crowds, previously, when I've kind of was just putting together the musical jigsaw pieces. And in Dublin as well. Dublin's such a funny place, because and I can't really speak for the rest of Ireland, but I can definitely speak for Dublin. There's a really quite hilarious, very blasé attitude towards musicians and bands in Dublin. Maybe it's something that goes with the territory of being a capital city, but it's partly because everyone here can play. Like every second person in Dublin can play an instrument. And I remember a friend of mine said to me once, if you threw a rock in Dublin city centre, you'd hit a singer-songwriter. So it's that kind of thing. And it's like, so I think people here don't really get impressed by anything. Like if Jimi Hendrix had come from Dublin, I guarantee people would have been like, you know, say to him, who does he think he is? There's that kind of thing with Irish people anyway, where we have this the Irish begrudgery thing, which is hilarious. And then there's the whole, you know, whatever, you know, that like there's a real, and I've heard people say it about London, but I've never experienced it in London. I've experienced it in Dublin, where you get the audiences with their hands on their hips and they're standing, that kind of thing. But I don't think that's going to happen now, because the reaction, particularly overseas in England and Scotland and Canada and Brazil, all over the world, since the EP came out, has been so overwhelming and overwhelmingly positive. And also, one thing that other people don't know, and this is a bit of an exclusive, is that I know how much more there is to come, and the amount and the extent of the quality of the unreleased material that will be on the album and will be on subsequent EPs and singles. I'm slightly scared. I was not expecting this reaction to this EP. I really was, and the label weren't either. Like the label, I mean, the label have some amazing artists on the label, like Cathal Coughlan of Micro Disney and the Fatima Mansions. They've got the Undertones, but they had never had like BBC Six music airplay,
right?
Or they'd had, I think Gideon Coe had a bit of it, but they'd never had anything from any other show or Stephen Mack. So I think they're taken aback. I think, you know, so we're all kind of taken aback at just what's happening, because to me, like, these were just like the first few songs that I was going to put out just to kind of, you know, test the waters. Like, these aren't my big songs, is what I'm saying. And a lot of the time, when bands have a hit or they have something that's taking off, it might be the only song of that nature that they have. They might have one or maybe two songs of that type, and they really have to kind of hang their album on that one or two songs. I know from having been a student of music all my life, I know the songs I have coming, and I think all of them have considerably, you know, more potential than the ones that are getting all this airplay around the world. So it's a weird feeling.
That's exciting for us too.
Yeah, it's exciting.
So, you know, you were talking about the music scene there with your record label. You know, as you know, I've got a radio show, and last show I played quite a lot of Irish artists, and there are definitely times in the past where I've struggled to find really cool new music from Ireland, and now it's a wash with great musicians and great artists. It's like, yes, there's like Pillow Queens. I like Fontaine's DC. I like Murder Capital, Soak from Northern Ireland, and bands like that. So it's a really, you know, you're in pretty good company there as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I really like what Pillow Queens do. I think writing's excellent, lyrics are really good, and there's a real unity between the four members. You can see it means a lot, and I know they must work, even though I don't know them as people, but they must work so hard, because I know how hard I work, and I'm not at the level that they're probably at yet. So it's, yeah, there's so much going on. I mean, there's loads of really good music that's coming out all the time, and that's another reason why I'm so blown away by the extent of the reaction and the amount of radio stations that have playlisted songs from Brave Warrior, is because there's so much stuff coming out all the time. There are millions of bands around the world, and to get to be one of the people, you know, one of the acts that are chosen, I always look at it, it's like they could play anybody, and they've chosen to play my song for 3 minutes or whatever it is, and I regard that as really, really kind of sacred in a way, because it's one of the, I think, getting airplay as an artist, you know, as a songwriter, you know, it's a means of reaching people, and the medium of radio is so warm. I think radio has actually become even more important over the last year and a half than it ever was, because so many people, it's their only route to the outside world.
That's so powerful. It is, it's outreach to somebody who might not have other, resources, doesn't have a TV. So it's really provides a company, I think, and I think we need to talk about your writing. We've touched on it quite a few times now. You've spent some time chronicling the story of the murder of Maria Inga Hauser, who was a young woman murdered shortly after arriving in Northern Ireland from Scotland. And your blog site, the Keeley Chronicles, you have nearly 40 blog posts on that subject. And I remember I was living in Belfast at the time. So when we spoke earlier on Messenger, I was like, oh gosh, I remember that murder. I remember that poor girl, her first visit to Northern Ireland, and it ended tragically. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how you got involved in writing about her?
Sure. Well, yeah, what happened was I had always been interested in true crime ever since I was a child. I mean, it was music and true crime have always been my two chosen subjects. The ones that kind of resonated with me on a deeper level than anything else that I'd ever come across. So, like as a child, like Crime Watch UK was my favorite TV show. I used to buy, as a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, I used to buy Murder Casebook, which is not many 10-year-olds read stuff like that. So that interest was always there. But what happened was I had been given the gift of a book called Missing Presumed, written by a man named Alan Bailey, who is the now retired former national coordinator of Operation Trace. And Operation Trace was the think tank that the Garda Síochána devised in order to try and investigate and try and establish links between various missing person cases of women in Leinster, in an area of what's been referred to as the Vanishing Triangle. So this was, it encompassed the cases of Annie McCarrick, Jojo Dullard, Fiona Pender, Fiona Sinnott, Ciara Breen, and Deirdre Jacob. And after a while, the investigation broadened, and the team of detectives, this task force, decided that they needed some outside help. So they enlisted a body called VICLAS, who are basically criminal profilers over in the UK. And their advice was that Operation Trace ought to widen the scope of their investigation, because they felt that there may well be other cases that had not come under their remit, that may have links to the cases that they were investigating. So one of the cases that they suggested the investigating team to look into was the case of Inga Maria Houser. And the team made contact with what was then the RUC, and the RUC provided all of the case files and all of the evidentiary material that had been stored over the period where they had investigated Inga's case from 1988 up until, I think it was 1998, 2000, around about 2000, that Operation Trace, because Operation Trace was formed in 1998, but it was about 2000 by the time that they actually got on to working on Inga's case. So they basically embarked upon a reinvestigation of Inga's case, and it's not widely known. And I've referred to it a number of times throughout the Keeley Chronicles blog. But Operation Trace, because people have often said, would there not be another police force that could maybe reinvestigate Inga's murder? But it has already happened, and that other police force was on Garda Síochána. So they, having looked into Inga's case again and having spent a significant amount of time trying to delve into the case to see if they could find any answers, they got no further forward. But the author of this book, Missing Presumed, who had by this stage he had retired from this task force, and the task force had kind of been wound down, and he wrote this book looking back on his career, and he included all of the cases, all of the 6 main cases that they had been investigating. So I was given this book as a gift, and I read it, and towards the end of this book, in a small chapter with a number of other cases, he discussed the case of Inga Maria Houser. Now, he granted, I think, only 5 pages to Inga's case. You know, the other cases, Annie McCarrick, got 20, 30 pages. But Inga's case was almost kind of more of an afterthought, because it wasn't one of the main cases that was originally part of the investigation, or the reinvestigation. But upon reading about her story, something about her, about the circumstances of her murder, about the time in which it occurred, in which all of these things just coalesced and spoke to me, actually screamed at me that I cannot move another muscle until I've learned more about who this person was, why she was there, what happened, essentially. So I was going to bed every night thinking about this. And you know, I remember one night, actually, having read about Inga, I woke up in the middle of the night crying, which never happened to me before. It's just, you know, it wouldn't be something I always, you know, sleep solidly straight through. So that was the point where I realized, okay, I have to do something, because I think when you feel something, I think it's a logical step to want to try and do something. So I thought, well, what can I do? I'm an indie rock musician in Dublin. I don't have any connections with Northern Ireland or with Munich, which was Inga's, you know, her birthplace. But I thought, well, I'll just do what I can. So I decided to start this blog. I spent 4 months. I thought, in order to do it properly, and I'm the kind of person where if I do something, I want to try and do it right. So I thought, I'll really delve into it. So I spent 4 months researching what became part 1. I published part 1 online. I didn't anticipate much of a response, because anyone that I'd mentioned Inga's name to in Dublin had never heard of her. And at that stage, the case had been out of the media spotlight for a period of 5 years. So I just thought, well, the case is dead. At that stage, it had been 28 years old. No one had ever been convicted. No one had ever been charged in relation to it. So I thought, well, you know, what can I do? But I put part 1 up online. And to my amazement, it went viral on the first day that I put it online in 2016. After that, it was just chaos, you know, where I was being, you know, contacted by hundreds and hundreds of people, emails, messages, left, right, and center, engulfed it all. And I had no idea that there was all of this interest in this case there, but that it kind of lain dormant under the surface. And I suppose it just needed something, a focal point to come along and, I suppose, you know, merge all of that interest, all that very disparate interest, and merge into one direction, which turned out to be the blog, which is, you know, the Keeley Chronicles. It's the first and only extensive blog on Inga's case, and I built it over a 5-year period now. So after that, I just devoted all my time to it, and building this blog and learning more about Inga, learning more about what happened, and meeting people in Northern Ireland, hosting meetings with politicians and police and anyone that I could sit down with. I was willing to sit down with anyone and everyone. And one of the good things is I don't have any political affiliations or any religious affiliations. So I was coming at this with no prejudices or no nothing, just coming with a genuine interest. And generally the people of Northern Ireland were hugely interested, hugely supportive, and of County Antrim particularly, where I've met so many lovely people and so many really supportive people who've got so much heart and so have so much compassion for Inga. And it's an ongoing open wound, and you'll know this because you come from that area. It's an ongoing open wound in that community, where this beautiful, bright, vibrant, intelligent, artistic young woman would make her way all the way from her home in Munich, all the way across Europe, to travel to a place that was at that time in the grip of a vicious conflict that had raged for 20 years by that point, by 1988. And she would arrive, and within minutes of her arrival, she would be driven away to her death without getting to spend one night or one day on the island of Ireland, the land of her dreams, as confirmed by her mum Almut and as confirmed by Inga herself. She stated in a postcard that she wrote just 2 days before she was murdered. The day after tomorrow, I go on to Ireland. I'm looking forward to that the best. And this was after having had the time of her life in London. She was having the best week of her life. That's the other thing that I find really heartrending and harrowing about this, because this isn't someone who's just walking down the road and this happened, or this isn't someone who just, this is someone who traveled 1,000 miles to be murdered, essentially. She traveled all that way on her own, having never been away from her parents before. And
with excitement.
With excitement, with joy, and with love. And she was in the middle of her midterm break. She was still in school. Like, this is just like, you know, and she'd given Northern Ireland and the island of Ireland a chance at a time when very few tourists or backpackers were going to make their way, if any. So there's so many things about the case that are very unusual, very strange, and incredibly upsetting. And I think that's why, and I think also Inga's personality as well shines through the gloom of 33 years of her unsolved case, shines through the silence that Inga has been unable to speak or live her life the last 33 years because of her killers. But something about her essence, and I see that essence, and I want to showcase that. I want to tell the world about her essence and about her beauty and her inspirational qualities, because they inspire me every day, and they inspire me to write all the songs on Brave Warrior EP, and they inspire me to write all the songs that are going to be on the album, and that are going to be on the next EP, and that are going to be on everything I ever release for the rest of my life. I'm determined to do this and nothing else as long as I live.
That gives so much more meaning as well to the Brave Warrior. You know, it's like a shining beacon with like Inga's name on it. They're saying, right, we're never going to forget you. We're going to keep the investigation alive until it's solved. I mean, it's hugely powerful stuff, Keeley. And, you know, I enjoyed the music before I even understood what the meaning was behind that. And it's, I mean, I looked at the video from Phoenix Law, and it's just, you said you just can't sleep. I can't sleep. I've not been able to sleep for about a week since I've watched the video. And it was her sister when she said that it still's giving me chills now, that she can't rest until she gets the answers. Please help. I could go now, because it makes you so emotional, and then going on and reading more of your blog posts as well. There was a 30th anniversary memorial at Ballypatrick as well, and when you unveiled her stone, time will see your tears run dry. There's a mockingbird singing songs in the trees. Seriously, it gets me now. So it's just amazing that it's just become this part of you, and Inga's will always be alive in you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's an amazing thing, and a lot of people have said that to me, and it always blows me away when I hear that. And it's such a strange story, and it's it's an extraordinary thing, you know, to have I essentially fell in love with someone who'd been dead for 30 years. You know, that's the strangest, like, that you can never meet. Like, I can never meet her. I would give anything to meet her for 5 minutes, just to get to know her for 5 minutes, to speak, would be the most amazing thing. But it's obviously impossible. But I think part of me is always chasing that, even though I know it's impossible. My head knows it's impossible, but my heart doesn't. So I'm kind of trying to work that out in the songs as well. So there's a lot going on, a lot to unpack. And the thing about the memorial, and thank you for having, really kind of delved into the details as extensively as you have. That memorial stone, I mean, when John Dollett of the SDLP, the late and much missed John Dollett, MLA, who'd been a real partner for me in working in tandem, you know, trying to raise awareness about Inga over 5 years, or the 4 years that we were working on it together. But when he gave me the responsibility and the opportunity to actually write the wording for Inga's memorial stone, I was so glad he had, because, you know, not even just for kind of selfish reasons, but just that I had, as a result of my of the blog and my research, I'd been contacted by friends of Inga's, and I had built up enough of a rapport with them, and had obviously discussed Inga at length, and had found out things that no one would know, things about her that had been overlooked for decades, because the press focus had always been on, the murder and, the kind of, and also there had been a lot of salacious tabloid coverage of Inga's case over the years. But I just thought, wow, there's so much beauty and so much personality that has been overlooked. And that's partly what I've tried to do with the Keeley Chronicles. It's not purely a factual blog. There's a very emotional element as well, and a sense of it being almost like, I would describe it as being like a doorway to another world. And like the Keeley Chronicles is that, Brave Warrior EP is that, the album is going to be that. All of these things they're a doorway to 1988, they're a doorway to Inga, they're a doorway to a space that has been contaminated by time and by events and by history and by murderous activities. But there is something beautiful, that has gone untouched and unblemished. And I'm determined that it's like, my take on it is that if I can succeed in getting Inga's voice and Inga's story and Inga's words onto the radio around the world, even in countries that haven't heard of Inga, then it's a way for Inga to travel the world, because that was her dream, was to travel the world. She never got to travel the world in her lifetime. So if she can travel the world in the form of songs, because she was a songwriter and she was a musician and she was a guitar player, but she never got to make a record. So it's like a way for her posthumously to travel the world in a very strange roundabout way. But that's it. And but those lines, there's a mockingbird, time will see your tears run dry, there's a mockingbird singing songs in the trees. Inga's one of Inga's closest friends, growing up in Munich, I had asked him, what was Inga's favorite song? Because obviously being a musician, I just wanted, I was really interested to know this. And he said, well, it was a song by Barclay James Harvest called Mockingbird. And I knew that song because I'm a huge fan of a record label called Harvest Records that my favorite band Pink Floyd were signed to, and they had bands like The Move and Kevin Ayers and loads of people like that, and Syd Barrett. And I'd heard the song on a compilation called Harvest Festival, and it's very kind of ornate kind of piece, very long kind of orchestral kind of song. And when I read the words, read the lyrics to the song, and when John asked me to compose this wording, I thought, well, the wording needs to be something that is really meaningful to Inga. I didn't want to choose some kind of, phrase that you see written on graves or see spoken about in church services. I just thought it needs to be something really specific. And when I looked through the words of what I had learned was her favorite song, and I've read those two lines in particular, time will see your tears run dry, there's a mockingbird singing songs in the trees. I thought it perfectly encapsulated everything. Because on the one hand, obviously time, hoping that in time that there is a resolution and that there can be some sort of salvaging from the ashes. And then on the other hand, there's a mockingbird singing songs in the trees. The attitudes of Inga's killers and their accomplices and how they left Inga. I think there's actually a passage in Alan Bailey's chapter on Inga's case in his book where he says the way that Inga was left out in the open, no attempt made to cover her up in any way, shape or form, speaks volumes for the attitudes of the perpetrators. Just zero respect for human life, zero respect for a beautiful young girl. And so I just thought, there's a mockingbird singing songs in the trees. They're the mockingbird. Those guys, their actions and their conduct throughout the decades that they have been at liberty, and even since they have been focused on by the authorities, by the PSNI, with their investigations, their attitude is that of a very mocking attitude, just absolutely no remorse, no sense of guilt or responsibility or anything at all, and very much in the trees. Obviously up there is very much a Ballypatrick Forest is the most. It's an incredible place, actually. I mean, it's a huge. I'm from Dublin, the capital city in the Republic of Ireland, but I've never been anywhere as big as Ballypatrick Forest. It is absolutely huge, and it's surrounded by trees. And where Inga was left was in a very wooden, kind of very much like a wood, with trees all around it. So, yeah, I just thought it just summed everything up really.
The album, as I say, it just it provides such an impact, and it just gets straight into you, and it becomes a part of the listeners as well, and that's a very special thing that you've created. Sorry, I just listening to you made me really emotional, because obviously when anybody of the listeners, if they start reading about this, I do just please do read Keeley's blogs,
Chronicles, yeah.
and Chronicles. Just keep pushing for resolution for the family, because the mother and father got no justice, and it's just too sad. Yes, far too sad. Sorry, that's very unprofessional of me. I do apologize, Keeley, but yeah, it's just it got me. Yeah,
thank you. No, thank you for having that, kind of receiving it in that way, and that's one of the things that I think is one of the saddest things, is that if Inga could only know just how much love there is, and if Inga's mum, because that's the other thing, I spent 2 years trying to track Inga's mum down to tell her, because back in 1989 she'd given a press conference, her only time in Northern Ireland, and she'd given a press conference in German at Maydown Police Station on the 4th of March 1989, in which she said, "I hope that the people of Northern Ireland do not forget my Inga." And when the blog went viral, and I realized, whoa, there's this huge degree of interest in this case that I thought no one was interested in, I was like, well, I have to tell her. I have to tell her that the people of Northern Ireland have not forgotten Inga. People around the world, I mean, the blog has now been read and shared in 112 different countries around the world, separate countries. So I was like, well, I have to try and, make contact with her. So I spent 2 years trying to track her down without success. I kept, sending letters and parcels, and they were either not reaching her, they were coming back unopened. And I knew there was something not quite right, because, and even though I'd had my letters translated into German, because I knew she didn't speak English, but it turned out that she'd suffered a stroke, which led to a heavy dementia in 2014, 2 years before I started work on what became the Keeley Chronicles. So I could never reach her, because she lost all of her memory. And that's one of the things, apparently, that's quite commonplace, where the bereavement of a parent in terms of loss of a child is concerned, but they often will have a stroke or something like that. I've read that it's like the body's way or the brain's way of dealing with an overload of grief and of mourning. So she had lost all her memories. So, it was, I never got a chance to tell her who I was, or what the blog or the reaction around the world, or any of this sort of stuff. So that was really strange. But I think if Inga had only known, it's like on the night she arrived in Northern Ireland, if she'd met anyone else, like if literally any other person, and I know that there are always going to be bad eggs here and there, but there can't be any worse egg. There can't be any more vile, vicious, demon than her killer and his accomplices. So it just the strange quirk of fate that for this to happen was like, who gets murdered getting off a ferry anyway? I mean, it doesn't happen, you know, it just doesn't happen. And for her to have been, if she'd been, I mean, Annie McCarrick, for example, who had been in Ireland for a period of a year and a half before she went missing, presumed murdered. Bettina Poschel, who's another foreign tourist who came to the Republic of Ireland, who was the victim of a sexually motivated murder. She'd been in Ireland, I think, for a week, or it's about 10 days before she was murdered. Manuela Rieda, same. She was here for a week. Inga had only just arrived in Northern Ireland when this happened. She hadn't been there. It's not like she was, you know, she was there for a week and she traveled around and she met 100 people. She met one person getting off that ferry, and it just turned out to be her killer, or her primary killer, should I say.
But you think today with DNA there'd be something they could do with technology and in forensics?
Yeah. The DNA in Inga's case is very complicated, and it always has been. And there's certain things I can say and certain things I can't say, but it is fraught with issues that have made life easier for those who are strongly suspected of involvement in crime. And there have been huge strivings made, you know, by the PSNI to try and match the DNA sample that they have. Because you see, Inga, originally the RUC had only a partial DNA sample. And back in the late 80s, the technology was very limited. So it would only allow them to eliminate, I think it's 1 in 2,000 in terms of a blood match. Whereas now the technology has moved forward to the extent that you will get like a 1 in a billion match if you identify DNA and you can match it to an individual. So back in 2005, there was a real shot in the arm for the case, because the PSNI, who had obviously, there was the RUC, and then they were kind of disbanded, and then PSNI came into being. The PSNI Detective Inspector Tom McClure had been tasked with looking over all of the crime scene materials, which the RUC had stored, although some of those crime scene materials were actually disposed of brainlessly in the late 90s. That's another story. But what happened was, back in 2005, Tom McClure was able to identify a new sample from which DNA could be extracted, a new crime scene stain from which DNA could be extracted. And it gave the PSNI a full DNA profile of one of the people who contributed to Inga's crime scene. And the reason that I use that language, it's very deliberate. It's kind of partly due to, for legal reasons, but people always think where Inga's case is concerned, can they not just find the killer? But there isn't just the killer. There's a small network of people who were involved and who contributed to Inga's crime scene in various ways. And it's just trying to find out who did what, when, where, and how, and all of that is what's wrapped up in this mystery. And it is such a mystery. I mean, I was studying true crime from when I was 10 years old. I don't know a more mysterious case. I really don't.
Yeah.
This is the ultimate mystery, because on the face of it, it seems fairly straightforward. The girl arrives off a ferry, she goes missing, and she turns up murdered. But it's not straightforward, because if it was straightforward, my blog wouldn't be 117,000 words long.
Wow.
If it was straightforward, I wouldn't have written a book that is a separate work from the blog entirely, that is 100,000 words long. So it's like, and I haven't published the book yet because I'm just so busy with music, but I hope to be able to publish the book at some stage.
Yeah, I wish you well with that and finishing it, and I look forward to the album. And any idea when it's going to be released?
Yeah, the album is going to be coming out next October. It's going to be coming out October 2022. But in the meantime, there'll be more releases. I mean, there's going to actually, the plan is, because at the moment we're actually having the vinyl pressed, so the Brave Warrior EP will be coming out on 10-inch vinyl in, I think it's in November. It'll be by
cool.
the end of the year, because at the moment there's a global vinyl shortage around the world, so the press and bands grappling with that. But so they'll be coming out on vinyl, and it'll be obviously released, you know, on a London record label to have, you know, I've never had a release on vinyl before, so that's going to be amazing. And then there'll be another EP, and I think next year a standalone EP before the album. So there's lots ahead.
So you've got all the ceiling there as well for actually, because I've just seen behind you, you've got all the ceiling where you can put all your vinyl album covers up. Could you imagine that?
Yeah, the thing about that, the funny thing about it is that I'm so maxed out for space here because I've used all of the wall space. So I thought to myself, well, you know, what if I could use the ceiling? So I put an LP up there, but it fell down on top of me. It parked me on top of the bounce within like 2 minutes. So I took that as a sign from the gods, from the gravity gods, that it was not to be.
Didn't break the album, did it? Didn't break the vinyl? Never mind you. Was the vinyl okay?
That was my first concern. I almost rushed the vinyl to A&E. my own, you know, the extent of my own war wounds were but a trifling concern.
But let's get to the quick fire round. Yeah, so it'd be a nice and easy one to start with, Keeley, right? So scone or scone?
Scone.
Shock horror.
You've upset her now. Greasy spoon or posh cafe?
Ooh, let me see. I'm going to say greasy spoon, because posh cafes melt my head. There's this sense of propriety, and you know, it's uptight and it's boring. And someone like me, with my, you know, festooned with music badges and stuff, I would be turfed out of there, quick as you could say, Miss Blenner has it, call the police. It would be a Withnon-esque style situation where I would arrive and I would demand cake and tea and fine wine. We want the finest wines, well, the finest milkshakes available to humanity.
I was gonna say you might, at a greasy spoon, you might have more chance of getting a chocolate milk. So another one, walking in the countryside or a walk along the shore?
I love this. Can we just do this quick fire round all the time?
Our quick fire round is never quick fire. Joe's always complaining that I go off on a tangent.
Okay. Say that again. A walk around the countryside. Say it again.
A walk in the countryside or a walk along the shore? And I know you're a city.
That's really tough. Wait a second. See, I love forests, but I love the sea. Okay. I'm going to say a walk around the countryside because my hair goes haywire if I'm in the wind, and in Ireland it's wind all the time. So I'm going to say a walk around the countryside.
I'm like that too, although it gets hot and sticky sometimes in the countryside here.
I know you've mentioned that you've not got any animals, but if you could choose, would it be cat or a dog?
Cat, definitely.
Fair enough.
All right, here's one for you, and I'm biased on this one. Irish soda bread or Northern Irish soda bread? Do you know the difference? You're a bread person first.
Here's the thing. I love bread. My favorite, but unfortunately, because of my weight, I gain weight so quickly when I eat my beloved bread, so I can't really eat bread. So, but if I had to choose, I'm going to say sourdough bread. I'm going to just go for a left field.
That's not on it.
It is now.
Although it is a kind of sour. I mean, I think then Northern Irish soda bread would win because that's more sour, right?
See, I don't think I've ever tasted Northern Irish soda bread, and I need to know. And I know that one other thing about Northern Ireland, and because I've always been interested in Northern Ireland even before getting so into Inga, you know, the whole you know, my life kind of becoming so entwined with her, but soda farls, that's something that I've heard. We don't really have them down here, but they're a big thing. Are they still a big thing in Northern Ireland?
Yes, yeah. I mean, you go to a cafe and you get a bacon and egg soda, and that's sort of farl with bacon and eggs or sausage or squeezed into it, so it's like a breakfast sandwich.
Wow.
Soda farls are toasted. I love them toasted.
Can I bring this back? Can I just say this is actually
See,
called a quick fire round?
She was always complaining that I go off.
I knew this was happening too. Seriously, I could feel it. Oh, yeah. Okay, so look, if you could have just one Smiths cover that you're only allowed to play for the rest of your life, just one, would it be A Boy with a Thorn in His Side or Big Mouth Strikes Again? Out of those two.
These are brilliant questions. Honestly, I'm loving it. Let me see. The Boy with the Thorn in His Side or Big Mouth Strikes. Well, here's the thing. That's a really interesting question. Big Mouth Strikes Again is exhausting because it requires such, like, you know, rhythmically and vocally. So if I played that for the rest of my life, I wouldn't live very long. I would have expired. So I'm going to say The Boy with the Thorn in His Side, partly just in order to try and extend my lifespan.
Brilliant answer.
Okay, childhood hero.
Okay. Oh, I don't have to choose, but I actually have to say who my childhood hero is. Okay. Yeah, no, I'm going to say my grandparents, actually, my granny and granddad. They're my childhood heroes. I spent most of my childhood living with them on and off, and they were just amazing. I mean, my granny is the kindest person I've ever met, and my granddad was hilarious and a really, really great granddad, and I miss them both very much. They both passed away, and you know, if I could bring anyone back from the other side of the world, I'd bring Inga Maria Houser and my grandparents back, and that's how it is. Yeah, them.
It's nice. You've made me feel guilty because I think I was thinking of others, and if you forget about immediate family that have had that influence on you.
That's right.
Next one, Jo.
And then I go on to a really important one: pineapple on a pizza, yes or no?
Actually, we should say this, because are you aware of the Harry Enfield sketch William Ulsterman by any chance?
Oh,
it's the funniest I have ever seen. And I basically, one of the people who works at my record label, who's this guy called Nick, who I just love. I'm hugely fond of him, and he's brilliant at his job, and he's a big part of everything that's happening, you know, Nick and Brian and all of the team. But Nick sent me that clip the other day, and I was like, it's my favorite clip of all time. And it involves this character that Harry Enfield is playing, called William Ulsterman, who is a dead ringer for it's Ian Paisley, an all but name. And he has this hilarious eruption at this party with this lady who presents with a spray. You've seen them. It's absolutely brilliant. And the guy goes postal at this party. So it's the best. But one of the things is he has this thing about, let me get this right, cheddar cheese with pineapple on a stick.
Yeah, that was a thing back in the 70s.
Really well. He got up on one about cheddar cheese and pineapple on it. And he ends up like they have to restrain. So the thing is, so when you said there pineapple, and was like, that's like straight out of Harry Enfield. And so much so I've forgotten what the original question was.
It was a simple one. It was do you like pineapple on a pizza, yes or no?
Quick fire, part of the quick fire round.
It's a quick the quiz in the title, Keeley. It's a quick fire round.
Okay, I can say yes.
Hey.
Oh, okay. All right, and I might change this up. Stone Roses or Suede. I did have another band on there and I've changed it.
Oh, how dare you! That is the most.
That's cool.
That is seriously cool. It's delicious, right? Because I get to talk about the roses and I get to talk about stuff.
Quick
going back to Jo,
Stone Roses or Suede. Here you go. This is so hard.
Oh, God, so that was cruel, Annella. I must admit.
It was, because even like I'm struggling with that too.
I'm going to say Suede. because I adore the Roses, always will. But when I saw them, I only got to see them once. Was that when they reformed and they played in Dublin in the
That's right. Recently, wasn't it?
Pierce Park in 2013, 2000. And it was the worst gig I was ever at. And every time I see Suede, it's amazing. So I'm going to go with Suede.
I'm going to go to another really important question. Red sauce or brown sauce?
And you see, I've given up eating brown sauce and red sauce. And I've given up eating all my favorite sugary stuff because I'm trying to keep my weight right. But if I could eat either of those, which would it be? See, Chef do a beautiful red sauce. I really, really. But then brown sauce is like that, you know, in sauce terms, it's like this, it's rather in football terms, it's this snake-hipped, you know, silky, skilled winger, kind of just bobbing and weaving down the flank, cutting in with a gilt-edged pass, a pinpoint accuracy.
Any silky player now. I'm just going to put brown sauce. I just got to think of brown sauce.
We're back to football. Okay, I'm going to say red sauce, but it's a close run thing.
I loved where that went. I know you said you don't watch TV, but so one of my questions was the last thing you watched on TV. So is that relevant?
Let's see, the last thing I watched on TV. Okay. Does it count if I watch something on my phone?
Yeah, I think that counts. Mm-hmm.
Okay, right. Because I watched most of. I was actually recording demos for the first 20 minutes of it, but I watched most of the European Championship final between England and Italy the other night. So that would be the football game.
Okay. And lastly, what's on your iPod? What music are you listening to? What's playing?
Oh, wow. Where do I start? How long have you got?
Hard one, isn't it?
There's so much. I mean, I listen to so much music all the time. Let me just think. What was I listening to this morning? Okay, I was listening to Blur. I was listening to Blur this morning and Nirvana, and I was also this mainly instrumental CD called Cosmic Americana that came with Uncut magazine, which I was listening to last night. So yeah, this morning listening to, but also lots of new stuff. I'm hearing like great new stuff all the time. I mean, I listen to loads of radio. I listen partly to track my own airplay, which I never get time to, because part of the thing when you're a songwriter and you get played on the radio, with IMRO, the Irish Music Rights Organisation, you're supposed to manually input all your airplay, but I know it's going to sound ridiculous, but I get way too much airplay. I just don't have time to do it. So I have 7 months.
Good problem.
It is a good problem. But I'm never going to get paid because I've got 7 months of airplay to input into their system, and I haven't got time to do it. Anyway, but new music, like I listen to radio. I listen to BBC Radio 6. BBC 6 Music, 8 Radio, which is the indie station in Dublin. I was listening to a really good post-punk show last night on Forest FM, which is a station in Dorset, who played one of the tracks of Brave Warrior, and they also played songs by Joy Division and The Pretenders, and really good stuff like that. And then, but I hear new stuff all the time, and recently, stuff that's come out. I think wow, that's really clever. The new public service broadcasting single is really good. Who else I've been really kind of jiving to? Holly McPhee, her new album is beautiful. I absolutely love it. Brendan Talon, his new stuff is really great. A lot of Irish stuff, a lot of English stuff. There's just everywhere you turn, and that's one of the great things. You're never short of an amazing outlet. Radio especially, there's so much quality radio out there. You just need to know where to look.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of my favourite stations is, we always do this, It's gonna
Trying to get a plug in about my radio station, and you
push you out the way, but it could be that way. It's not when it's recorded, it could be that way. No, but to think we almost lost like BBC Radio 6 as well. I think, you know, there was just such an uproar, wasn't there? So yeah,
I love that.
Yeah.
That's really good.
The thought that like to lose that, I mean, how suicidally sabotaging can the Beeb get? Like, that's shocking. That it was considered, it was even an idea, is just outrageous.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. But it's here to stay now, hopefully, for a long time. But listen, thanks for answering the not so quick fire.
They're never quick fire.
But and letting us have a really good peek into the wonderful world of you, Keeley. You know, we've come to the end of the chat, and we've learned so much more about you, and so looking forward to hearing about your next chapters, Keeley. But look, before you go, can you just remind us all where we can catch you online and on social media?
I will, and thank you so much for such a lovely intro. And it's a lovely intro to the outro. That reminds me of the song by the Bonza Dog Doodle Band called The Intro and the Outro. Yeah, you can find me. I am let loose on social media, causing havoc, causing sweet havoc on a daily basis when I'm not doing like 9 million other things. I'm on Instagram as Keeley Sound, Twitter, Keeley Sound, Facebook, Keeley Sound, everything. YouTube, you name it, Keeley Sound. I've got the same handle on all those places. That's Keeley, because people are always misspelling it. And SOUND. And my blog is the Keeley Chronicles, which you'll find at thekeeleychronicles.wordpress.com. Or if you put the name Inga Maria Houser into a search engine, it's usually one of the first entries under that. And then there's the record, the EP, which is Brave Warrior, which you'll find it's on all streaming platforms. It's on Bandcamp. It's out there. It's here, there, and everywhere. It's Quit the Beatles, and it's on the radio, and it's on your wonderful show as well.
And it's soon to be on vinyl, which I'll be getting. So it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Keeley. Wishing you a very successful and healthy rest of your 2021. If you ever make it to Portland, Maine, I'll buy you a banana milk or a strawberry milk or a chocolate milk. But thanks for being here today. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
All right. So goodbye from Joe's here. Goodbye from Joe.
Goodbye,
on my
Annella.
screen, you're here.
Well, I don't know where you are. You're there or there, but goodbye, Annella.
Bye, Keeley.
Thanks again. Thank you.
You're so welcome. I've loved meeting both of you, and it's been, honestly, it's just been from the word go. You've both been so lovely and warm and engaging, and just the perfect hosts. Thanks so much.
Thanks for tuning in to Stuff and Nonsense. Our guest was writer, musician Keeley. Please show some love by leaving us a review, like, subscribe, retweet, you know what to do. Find us on the Stuff and Nonsense Show on Facebook, which is facebook.com/The Stuff and Nonsense Show. See you next time.